We can cross live to the UK House of Commons, where the Prime Minister Boris Johnson is facing his weekly grilling in Parliament. It comes ahead of the UK Chancellor's spring statement, which will be made against a backdrop of rising fuel, energy and food costs.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The degrading strip search of Child Q 2 years ago in a school that should have been a safe place at the hands of police officers who she should have been able to trust has caused anger and distress across the country. On Monday, the policing minister failed to answer 4 separate questions in this chamber, asking when he first knew about Child Q and what urgent action he took in response. So I asked the Prime Minister, when did he first hear about the strip search of Child Q in her school, and whether he believes that the characteristic dither and delay of his government in responding to this appalling case is remotely acceptable when it comes to the safety of children.
Mr. Speaker, I think that is a completely ridiculous characterisation of the response of the government, because of course the reports of this incident are deeply distressing and deeply concerning. Everybody shares her feelings about that, Mr. Speaker, but the Metropolitan Police have rightly apologised and the IOPC is investigating, and for that reason it would not be right to comment further.
Sir Oliver Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People across North East Hertfordshire are coming together to provide support and refuge to families fleeing the invasion in Ukraine. The Baldock and District Action Committee are about to welcome 4 families to our community. And doesn't he agree with me that this shows the open-hearted generosity of the British people? And will he continue to do all that he can with the Refugees Minister to make this process as simple and speedy as possible?
Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and I also thank all those involved in the 2 big schemes that we have now for welcoming people from Ukraine. And the Homes for Ukraine scheme is now open. I think about 40,000 have already applied. 150,000 homes across this country, families across this country have said they want to welcome Ukrainians. That's a fantastic thing. I thank Baldock and District for helping to lead the way.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 800 loyal British workers fired over Zoom, instantly replaced by foreign agency workers shipped in on less than the minimum wage. If the Prime Minister can't stop that, what's the point of his government?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we condemn the callous behaviour of P&O, and I think that it is no way to treat hard-working employees, and I can tell him that we will not sit by, Mr. Speaker, because under Section 194 of the Trades Union and Labour Relations Act of 1992, it looks to me, Mr. Speaker, as though the company concerned has broken the law. And we will be taking action, therefore, and we will be encouraging workers themselves to take action under the 1996 Employment Rights Act. Both acts, Mr. Speaker, passed by Conservative governments. And if the company is found guilty, then they face fines running into millions of pounds, Mr. Speaker. And in addition, we will be taking steps to protect all mariners who are working in UK waters and ensure that they are all paid the living wage, Mr. Speaker.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, when Owen Paterson was on the ropes, the Prime Minister was prepared to rip up the entire rulebook to save his jobs. P&O workers want him to show the same fight in relation to them. The government had advance warning of these mass sackings. A memo was sent to the Transport Secretary and to the Prime Minister's office, but they didn't lift a finger to stop them. Did the Prime Minister not understand the memo, or did he just not bother to read it?
Prime Minister.
I think what the right honourable gentleman needs to rip up, Mr. Speaker, is his pre-scripted questions. Because I'm just answered the question, and the point at issue, Mr. Speaker, is whether or not the government was properly notified, and it's not about what happens the previous evening. I knew about it on the Thursday it became public, but the company concerned has a duty to notify the government 45 days, Mr. Speaker, before they take action of that kind. That is why we're taking the action that we are to protect hard-working people. And what we're also doing, by the way, Mr. Speaker, this month is lifting the living wage for all workers across our country by another £1,000. So it's up £5,000 since 2015.
I think the Prime Minister just said he knew about it on the day. Yeah. I take it from that answer the Prime Minister didn't read his WhatsApp briefing.
Surely not.
Let's test his rhetoric. Mr. Speaker, since the Prime Minister came to office, P&O have received over £38 million of government contracts. And the parent company, DP World, is lined up for £50 million of taxpayers' money under the Freeport scheme. The government is apparently reviewing these contracts, but reviews don't save jobs. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that these companies will not get a penny more of taxpayers' money or a single tax break until they reinstate the workforce?
Mr. Speaker, I think what the House has already heard is that we are taking legal action against the company concerned under the 1992 Employment and Trades Union and Labour Relation Act, and that is the right thing to do, because it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, that they have broken the law. But if he's asking this government to do what Labour usually want us to do and actively pitchfork away investment around the country from overseas, Mr. Speaker, then that is not what we will do. We'll take them to court, we'll defend the rights of British workers. What we will not do, Mr. Speaker, is launch a wholehearted campaign, as they would want, against overseas investment, because that is completely wrong, and wrong for those workers, Mr. Speaker.
Well, DP World must be quaking in their boots. The Prime Minister says how disappointed he is in them whilst handing them £50 million. Prime Minister said about the law, speaking of hollow reviews, as the law stands, it's not illegal to pay seafarers below the national minimum wage, right, even if they're working out of UK ports and in UK waters. 2 years ago, Prime Minister, his government admitted that was unjustifiable 2 years ago, and promised 2 years ago, you've guessed it, to review it. 2 years on, despite what he says today, nothing's been done, leaving the gate wide open for P&O. British workers don't need another empty review, they need action. So when will the Prime Minister fix that gap in the law?
Mr. Speaker, with great humility, I must ask the right honourable gentleman to listen to the answer that I gave to the first question, because it would then help him to scrap his third or fourth question and try another one. We are going to address the defects in the 1998 Living Wage Act, Minimum Wage Act, and make sure that everybody serving in the UK exclusive economic zone, working in the UK exclusive economic zone, gets paid the living wage as people do in the rest of the country.
Here's Starmer.
The problem is that's what he said 2 years ago. It didn't happen, and P&O took advantage of the gap left wide open by this Prime Minister. Yes. P&O's behaviour comes off the back of a string of fire and rehire cases. Profitable companies threatening to fire workers unless they accept a pay cut. The Prime Minister keeps telling us just how opposed he is to fire and rehire. But as we saw on Monday, Mr. Speaker, as we saw on Monday, he doesn't have the backbone to ban it. Whilst he sits on his hands, more and more workers are having their lives thrown upside down by this appalling practice. What good to them is a Prime Minister who's all mouth and no trousers?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the most notable practitioners of fire and rehire are, of course, the Labour Party themselves. he may be interested. He may be interested to know we will be vindicating the rights of British workers, UK employees under UK law. But the law that the P&O, the company themselves, are allegedly relying on was introduced, I can tell him, as a result of EU directives. Never forget, Mr. Speaker, and he may not like it, that's the reality. He would have kept us unable to change it, unable to get out of it. He would have made it impossible for us to protect UK employees in the way that we're going to do. But what we're doing, Mr. Speaker, above all, is ensuring that workers in this country have the best protection of all, which is a job, Mr. Speaker. And under this government, thanks to the steps that we have taken, thanks to the stewardship of the economy by my right honourable friend, which you'll be hearing about in a little bit more, Mr. Speaker, we have people in payroll employment, 600,000 more of them than before the pandemic began.
Keir Starmer.
He can complain all he likes, but on Monday, he ordered all of his lot to abstain on a vote to ban, fire and rehire.
Exactly.
And they all did. And then, Mr. Speaker, to add insult to injury, after the vote, his party...
You're watching live feeds from the UK House of Commons, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is facing his weekly grilling. He spoke about child Q, who was stripped and searched on the school premises while she was on her period. The Prime Minister also spoke about the British people opening their homes to Ukrainian refugees. Boris Johnson also touched on the Employment Act passed by the Conservative government and efforts made by the British government to protect mariners on the waterways. This follows the sacking of close to a third of P&O workforce in a Zoom call without notice by a senior member of staff.